Hey there. Welcome to another episode of The Writing Life, or The Publishing Life, or John bitching about things in publishing, because that's what this one's going to be. This is going to be me ranting about holdover, antiquated ideas that the publishing industry and bookstore industry have held on to that make shit more complicated and less profitable for all parties than it needs to be. There's two of these that are pet peeves of mine. They're things I bitch about ad infinitum, and I'm pissed right now that I'm about to have to buy another block of ISBN numbers. For those of you who don't know what an ISBN number is, it's that number that says ISBN. Here, let me point to it this way because that's how I fucking feel about them. This is an identifying number that bookstores and libraries... Ooh, sorry for that, like jamming my pit up in the camera. Sorry. I forgot to shave for the past 40 years. It's an identifying number that libraries and bookstores use to identify and buy your book. That's a good thing, right? We want people to be able to buy our book. And I don't have a problem with there being a repository for these numbers. I don't have a problem with paying for the numbers. Where I have a problem is the way the numbers are sold. Let's start with there's one place to buy them. And that kind of makes sense because if it's one central repository, then they've got to be stored in one place. Otherwise, you get multiple companies and they'll use the same numbers for things, and then, you know, maybe you type in 9781946926005 because you want to get the paperback version of Quincy Harker Year One, but somebody else has used that number from a different cataloging service, and it's the wrong book. So I get that there needs to be one place. Here's my beef. If you want to publish one book in one format ever, you need to buy one ISBN. One ISBN from myidentifiers.com, which is Bowker, the service that sells ISBNs in the United States. One costs you $125. For a bookstore to order your book, your one book that you ever want to have available, $125 to get entered into the catalog. But wait, you want to do a hardcover and a paperback and an audiobook. You don't need ISBNs for ebooks. You never ever need ISBNs for ebooks. Ebooks aren't cataloged that way. I have well over 100 ebooks on my Amazon account that I've written and published. I have an ISBN for exactly 0 of them. But if you want to publish a hardcover and a paperback, a trade paperback and a mass market paperback and a limited edition leather bound, you need a different ISBN for each format. Again, that makes sense. People have to order things and we want them to be able to order the right things. Fine. So one ISBN is $125. That means 10 should be $1,250. But maybe you get a break for buying in bulk, so maybe it'll be $1,000 if you buy 10. No. Try $295. One, is $125. 10. Less than 3 times the price of one. What the fuck? It's almost like someone made up the fucking numbers because they don't tie to anything and they have a monopoly on this chunk, this required chunk of the publishing industry, and you can't do a goddamn thing about it. Because if you want one, $125. 10, $295. We're rounding up. I don't have 2.95 fingers. 100, I'm not going to do that 10 times, nor am I going to count. $575. So buy 10 for $300, or buy 10 times that number for less than double the price. No brainer, right? That's what I did 2.5 years ago when I started buying ISBNs for Falstaff books. I bought 100 of them. I paid $575. The big block that's available, I'm 100% sure that there are way bigger blocks for bigger publishers, but the big block that's readily available is 1,000 ISBNs. So 10 times the $575 block is $1,500. Again, a 10 times multiplier on products is less than a 3 times multiplier on the per unit price. And it's barely 2%. You're paying $1.50 for per ISBN in the 1,000 block lot versus paying $125 for one ISBN by itself. It's like the item has no inherent value and someone's just making up a fucking number because they have a fucking monopoly. Now again, we need some uniform, curated method of tracking what book is what. I get that. It's going to take a computer, probably a fairly significant one, that can handle a big fucking database with a couple of redundant backups. That computer's probably going to cost a little money. Someone's going to have to curate all of this shit. I get that too. Probably more than one someone. There are literally hundreds of thousands of books published every year in the United States. If they charged $1 for every one book, you go on the internet, you log in to the ISBN registration website, you boop, $1. Poop, it shits out an ISBN. Oh, I'm sorry, I need 2 more because I'm doing audio and hardback in addition to my paperback that I just registered. Okay, boop, boop, $2, boop, boop, 2 numbers. It may take more than $1. My beef is that as a small publisher, $1,500 is a lot of money. $575 is not an insignificant amount of money. If you don't think that's a significant amount of money, what's your fucking car payment, kids? So, I don't have a car payment. My vehicles are both almost 10 years old. Shit's paid for. So, my point is that because there's a monopoly, we, the small guys, are fucked. And not even in a good way, not like kissed and bought dinner and, laid down on a bearskin rug in front of the fire and making sweet love and lick on my chocolate, soft, salty balls. No, we're just fucked. Which takes me to the other piece of the fucking that small press publishers and self-published authors get from a holdover in the way books are sold. ISBNs probably used to take a bunch of people to manage that fucking database. Now, one mildly trained monkey could do it. I have friends who work for Microsoft who deal with big fucking databases. Yeah, you'd pay some guy 50 grand to set it up, and then your fucking 12-year-old could maintain the database. Your 12-year-old would probably be really good at maintaining the database. I'm 45. I would suck at it. I'm too old. I don't know shit anymore. So I'm sure that it used to take a lot of shit to deal with that, but it doesn't anymore. And there's no reason that Bowker can't continue to be profitable while making it easier on small presses and self-published authors. Another thing that makes it hard is dealing with bookstores. I love the people that work for bookstores. I love anyone who's in the business of selling books. But the bookstore model of book sales is fucking broken. It's stupid. It defies the laws of fucking business. And I don't know of another industry that operates almost totally on fucking consignment. The books that are on the shelf in your local bookstore probably have not been paid for by the bookstore. Let me let that sink in for a minute. You walk in to a Borders. I know there are no more Borders. We're using that as a fictional example so that none of the people who work for bookstores that are currently in business get pissed off at me because I either did mention them in this rant about fucking bookstores, or I didn't mention them and I gave a shout out to either the big chain or the little indie bookstore. So you walk into a Borders, and there's, 10,000 books in the building? 20,000 books? 50,000 books? Practically none of them have been paid for by the bookstore. When a publisher sends a box of books to a bookstore, we don't get paid right away. Not only do we not get paid right away, we may get stuck with the books coming back. For you as a publisher, as an author, to have your books widely distributed in bookstores in the United States, you must accept returns. This means that if, after a period of time, usually about 90 days, the book hasn't sold, they can send the books back to you and not pay you. And if it's a mass market paperback, they don't even have to send you the book back. They tear the cover off. I don't honestly know if they send the covers back or if they just tear the covers off and send you a report. It would be kind of stupid to send a big box full of torn off covers. Should just send a fucking report. But anyway, that's why if you sometimes have seen books that are sold without the front cover, that means that somebody went dumpster diving behind their local Borders and fucking stole books and sold them to you. That's awful. Don't do that. So, were I, as Falstaff Books, to offer returns for bookstore sales, it would work something like this. Borders sends me an order. Hey, John, We think that we're going to sell 5,000 copies of the brand new epic fantasy book Bones of Empire by Aaron Rosenberg and Stephen Seville. John says, that's great. I'll send you 5,000 copies. Do you want them all to your central warehouse, or am I shipping 5 copies to 1,000 fucking Borders? The answer is I want to send them to your central warehouse. Oh, whatever. We won't get into all that. So I place an order with my printer for 5,000 copies of a book. I pay my printer for 5,000 copies of a book. As small as we are, we don't have net terms with our printer. When we place an order, we pay. Bigger publishers, I'm sure, don't have to pay immediately. Many businesses operate on a net 30 deal. That means that you buy something, 30 days later, you pay your supplier or the manufacturer. You're planning on selling the item within that 30 days. The big difference between the way it works with a bookstore is it's net 90, and if you don't sell it, you just send it back. No harm, no foul. This means that unlike other businesses that I've worked in where company buys something, company waits 30 days, pays the supplier for it. Well, kind of fucked. You're stuck with it. You're going to have to bust your ass to sell it. In the bookstore world, nah, we didn't sell it. We're sending it back. So that author then has something in their royalty statement called a hold against returns. Let's say you got a $10,000 advance. Your book is selling for $10 and you have a 10% royalty. For you to pay back that advance, you need to move 10,000 copies of that book. Your royalty statement comes in and it says, you've sold 11,000 copies of your book. Yay! The book's earned out. Fantastic. That means we'll probably get another contract. And that means that you, Mr. Publisher, owe me money because you sold an extra 1,000 copies. I get $1 a copy. $10 cover price, you get 10% of cover, you get $1 a copy. That's why I use those numbers, because it makes the math fucking easy, kids. The numbers are never that easy. That was example. Although we do pay 10% of cover price on print sales at Falstaff because I get to set the numbers and the cover prices, so I use 10% because it makes it easy. That's a little better than most small presses are on print, and it's better than a lot of large presses are on print, but I'm the one guy who has to sort through all the royalties, and I wanted to make shit easy, so instead of 8, I do 10. Whatever. So hey, publisher, you owe me $1,000 because you fronted me 10. I've earned 11. Well, we think that out of that 11,000 that we've sold, we expect 4,000 to come back. So we're going to hold against returns $4,000. So you haven't earned out yet. Depending on returns, you might earn out later. Smell like bullshit to you? This is in place from an antiquated system back in, I don't remember if it's World War I or World War II, because despite the amount of white in my beard, I was not alive for either of those events. But publishers did this to spur bookstores into taking a chance on unknown authors and riskier titles. There are other ways to do that. Right now, publishers are paying bookstores for the displays in the front of the store. Yeah, you didn't think anybody actually picked that shit, did you? No. That's that's called co-op advertising. And those racks that are sitting up there with a fuck ton of the new James Patterson book, James Patterson's publisher paid for that placement. Because James Patterson needs the fucking help, right? So this practice is a minimum of 70-year-old holdover, and it means that companies of my size and bigger have two choices. You can either invest a flaming fuck ton of money in printing books that you don't know if they'll sell and shipping them all over the country and sitting on and spending the money and then hoping the money comes back and stiffing your authors on royalties and blah, 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 blah. Or you don't offer returns. If you don't offer returns, your books aren't going to be stocked by the major bookstores. Period. That's why you won't find any Falstaff titles in airport bookstores anywhere in the United States. We aren't going to be in Walmart. We aren't going to be in CVS. We aren't going to be in many of the chain bookstores of any flavor. And we're not going to be in many of the independent bookstores because most of them also operate on a consignment model. That means that smaller presses either have to roll the dice and pray that they can cash flow the gamble of sending out thousands of dollars, thousands of copies of unsold books that they've already paid for, or we focus on ebook and audio and take what little piece of print sales we can get through reaching readers, which is that's the focus that we've chosen at Falstaff, and by we I mean me and the cat, because other than a pile of volunteers, that's the fucking staff. I guess since I don't pay myself, I'm technically a volunteer too, so regardless. So, what do? Do you roll the dice? I don't. I watched a friend of mine almost go bankrupt and lose his company when Borders went under because literally pallets of books came back, and he'd already paid for those. He never got paid for those books. He was giving away those books for 5 years. Shit, I haven't seen him in a while. He may still be giving those books away. I have another friend who says that they have literally hundreds of paperbacks under their house because of bookstore returns. They haven't published books with bookstore sales in several years, and they still have hundreds of books under their house. I have a pile of books behind me, but not hundreds. Maybe 100. I don't know. If you want to zoom in and count, go for it, but if you've got that kind of time, you should go find something else on YouTube. Look at a cat video. Fuck, I don't know. The bookstore model is flawed, it's broken, and it's why people like me don't care about print. I love print. I love bookstores. I love hanging out in bookstores. I don't read print. I have a lot of them. One shelf back there is full of print books that I've bought from friends of mine because I like to get signed books. I have a bookcase in the front room that is full of print books that I've bought. But it's not a focus of my business because the model is broken. I can't ship out 10,000 copies of the next Quincy Harker collection and hope that in 3 months I'll get paid for 7,000 of them, because the margins on print book sales are too narrow to be able to do that. That's another challenge, is that I'm paying to print the book, and then I'm paying to have the book shipped to the bookstore, or I'm paying to have it shipped to me. I'm paying to print the book. I'm paying the distributor a cut of money. Then the bookstore gets a 40 to 50% discount off retail price. What that leaves when a book is sold in a bookstore, it usually leaves somewhere between 17 and 23% for the publisher. 23%, that sounds great, right? Except 10% of that goes to the author. So that means that somewhere between 7 and 13% of the cover price of a book comes back to the publisher. In the case of Bones of Empire, that's a $15 retail book. That means that roughly $3 comes back to Falstaff. $1.50 of that then goes out the door in royalties. So we make about $1.50 per $15 trade paperback. I make more when I sell them at conventions. That's why I do a lot of conventions, because then the bookstore isn't getting that 40% profit. I'm getting that 40% profit. But and those are things that drive me fucking crazy. ISBNs and bookstores. Because I always have people, why can't I find your stuff in bookstores? Well, and then you get a 27-minute explanation of why our stuff isn't widely distributed in bookstores. I feel better. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. I got that all off my chest, and you got to hear me say fuck a lot more than I usually do in these. And maybe you learned a little bit about how publishing works. If you liked this, please subscribe. You can support me on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/JohnHartness. And, see me at a convention. Buy a bunch of books. Till next time, y'all be good to one another, all right?